Okay, so you're joining us again for the 5 best practices for a successful year-end closing webinar with AvidXchange. It's sponsored by JMT Consulting. My name is Melissa and I'm the manager of events and programs here at JMT. We're an independent consulting firm that works solely with nonprofits on their ERP back office solutions. I'm going to go over a couple of housekeeping tips today, and then I will turn it over to our wonderful presenter. If you have any questions at all during the presentation, please make sure that you utilize your Q&A box at the bottom of your control panel. You can also chat us if you have any technical difficulties, can't hear, can't see, please let us know. Also, we are recording the webinar today, and we will send you a copy of the recording as well as the slides following the webinar. Today we have Rhonda Green joining us. She's a Principal Solutions Consultant from AvidXchange. She is our presenter. And with that, I will turn it over to Rhonda. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. A little bit about me. I am, as mentioned, a Principal Solutions Consultant at AvidXchange. But before this role, I actually created our Payment Services Division at AvidXchange and was the VP of that area for several years. And prior coming to AvidXchange, I actually have a long background in accounting, specifically AP management roles. So I really enjoy sharing best practices and talking to my fellow peers about, creating efficiencies and the best way to navigate through the changing times in AP. So today, we're going to talk about why year-end closing is important, potential roadblocks, how to ensure a seamless close, how AP automation can help, and then we'll finish with Q&A. So let's get started. So why is year-end close important? Well, I think we all know that it's very important, but luckily it only comes once a year. But obviously it provides details on the company's financial status and growth. How did they do this year? It also allows teams to proactively forecast, and it creates fresh, accurate balance sheet accounts that are ready for the new year. But sometimes we may run into roadblocks and when we're trying to close. Some of those could be incorrect reconciliations, inaccurate or irrelevant KPI reporting. And what about incorrect transaction reporting? I mean, that would be disastrous. So now we're going to take a quick poll. If you'll take a couple seconds to answer that poll. Do you currently use a year-end close checklist? All right, we're going to close it up here in just a second. All right. Oh, well, that's great news. So I'm glad to see that 74% actually use a year-end close checklist, because that is a huge best practice. So if you're not doing that today, I highly suggest that you create one. There's lots of great resources available to you online that could certainly give you the template to get a start on creating that checklist. All right, so how to ensure a seamless year-end close. So make planning and preparing collaborative. Very important that we get all parties involved, and a lot of times that's including folks outside of finance. Also, as mentioned, we want to make sure that we're identifying any solutions, and again, making sure that we're taking note of those so that we remember for the next year-end. Also, communication is key, early and often. Review and reconcile often. And finally, automate operational components. Certainly with automation comes a lot of gained efficiencies, so we'll certainly talk about that too. So make planning and preparing collaborative. going back to our poll question here, create and implement a year-end closing checklist. And why this is so important at year-end is fairly obvious. You're doing tasks that you may only do once a year, and so they may not be readily come to mind when you start to work on something. So if you do note everything that needs to be done and maybe go ahead and assign those tasks to different individuals, that will certainly help achieve a smooth year-end close. Also, collaborating as a full finance team is important too, not to work in silos, and then also including those other business unit leaders in the discussion. A lot of times when it comes to close, particularly accounts payable close, it's important that we get our invoice approvals, our expense reports, get these types of things received in a timely fashion so that we can get them entered in to the system before the year closes. So it's very important that folks outside of the finance department understand these deadlines and that they're communicating it out as well to their team. Also, take a proactive approach to avoid running into any roadblocks. And again, particularly for accounts payable, some of the things that I've done in the past that really, really helped, not only at year end, but also at month end and quarter end, was performing invoice reviews. And this says here monthly, but that could even be done on a weekly basis. So as an AP manager or maybe an accounting manager, it's a good idea to review what's been entered in, particularly looking to make sure things are coded correctly. And again, if you have a high volume, it may not be a good idea to spend the time to review every single invoice. So maybe look at a certain dollar amount and above and check for things like coding, proper approvals, sales and use tax accruals, were those done correctly? And this helps you, obviously with having to do, any corrections to coding, but also when auditors do come in, you'll feel a lot better knowing that you've kind of kept your eye on these as you've gone along. And the same goes with monthly vendor reviews. And so this could actually mean a couple different things, but one of the things that I think is very important, again, to a successful close is making sure that all of your vendors are set up correctly in your system, that you have W-9s for all those vendors, that you've done your due diligence. TIN matching, for example, the irs.gov website has a great TIN matching program that is free to use. So if you're not doing that today, I encourage you to go check it out. But basically, you can take your W-9, enter in that TIN number, and make sure that what you have in your hand agrees to what the IRS has. So this would obviously greatly decrease B notices that you may receive. And again, 1099s, one of, I think probably all of our favorite thing to do. But it will definitely help with that process as well. There's no scrambling around at the last minute trying to contact a vendor to get a W-9. It's really a best practice not to pay a vendor, not to move forward with that vendor relationship until they supply you with that information. And again, very important that you note any inaccuracies that you may have come across and identify how to fix them, but most importantly, how to avoid them from happening again in the future. And then communicating early and often. I think it's very important to, send out emails, of course, to all of your staff, letting them know about, what's going on, deadlines. With the holidays, making sure that, PTO is scheduled, with everyone in mind, making sure that you're covered to get a smooth year end. But also, I think communication also needs to be sent to vendors. If you're waiting for any invoices, maybe you've received some goods and you haven't been invoiced yet. So it doesn't hurt to reach out to that vendor, particularly if it's a larger dollar amount, and ask for your invoice. Or if there's any issues with invoices that are preventing you from paying anything that you should, work with them to resolve if it's pricing issues or some other issue. But keeping that open line of communication between your team and your vendors is critical. Also, thinking outside the box. Think beyond your department for feedback on processes. I think, again, it's very important to have your processes documented and even policies created around those. That way, all expectations are set, they're in writing. If you hire new staff during the year, they should be reading those, acknowledging that they read those, so that everyone knows what's expected of them on a daily basis. And maybe this is the time to look at some of your current processes and review them. And again, include others in that review to see if maybe there are things that you could be doing better or that you could improve on, and take those necessary steps. Because again, the more proactive you are, the more likely you are to have a seamless close. And also share those deadlines and calendars with your team to stay organized. One thing that always comes to my mind is expense reporting at year end, making sure that everyone is submitting those, making sure that your AP team is aware of any large expenses that could be coming along. So that line of communication really needs to be far-reaching. And as we mentioned a minute ago, reviewing and reconciling often. Things like reconciling monthly to confirm your actual spend matches the withdrawal amount, reviewing and updating vendor accounts. Also, use your resources and accounting tools to confirm actuals. One thing I always like to say is that sometimes we may not be utilizing all of the functionality in our ERPs. There maybe are things that we could be using that would help. So I encourage you to maybe talk to your consultant or someone at your ERPs just to find out, am I doing everything that I can be doing to ensure that what I'm doing is correct and the most efficient. And then automating operational components. Obviously, finance teams are multitasking all the time. And AP automation can definitely help teams work smarter and not harder by creating a centralized vendor setup and invoicing process to reduce duplicate payments, offering the full picture of the company's finances, even making sure that you are receiving up-to-date, accurate reporting. Particularly important is that accrual reporting that comes at month end and year end. So no more relying on spreadsheets. When invoices come in a manual fashion, if we're not able to get them entered in, we're probably keeping them on our desk, entering them into a spreadsheet. Well, that can be a thing of the past with AP automation. Because it's going to track that for you. So all you'll have to do is push a button. Also, cash flow forecasting, understanding what's due. Again, if you're not using POs, which of course is another valuable tool to help you be able to cash forecast, but just being aware of your expenditures and that if there's anything large that you have coming up so that there's no surprises. Not to mention audits. I think sometimes there's a misconception that auditors may be leery about automating AP in particular, because we all know that AP is heavily audited, but actually that's very far from the truth. Auditors, they don't like to have to go through paper any more than we do. So by giving them read-only access to your data is very important. So in this world we're living in this year, having that access, that remote access is very important. So again, automating operational components as much as you can takes a lot of manual, laborious tasks off of your plates and puts them on, the software. And so you'll find that you're not losing any visibility or any control. If anything, you're gaining some. And so we'll talk a little bit about that here in just a few minutes. So how can AP automation help? So there's many, many reasons to automate AP, and here's just 4, values that are, points out 4 different values that you can gain from automating AP. So as I mentioned, visibility and control. You're gaining that real-time visibility into your invoice data. This year with the COVID-19, I've talked to many people, many financial professionals that didn't have access to their information. So they were having to drive in to the office or maybe even bringing stacks of paper home. So with automation, that goes away. As long as you have access to the internet, you'll have access to your data. Also, just efficiencies overall. You can reduce and significantly reduce your invoice and payment processing times. You don't have to worry about missing any cash discounts or having to pay any late fees. This is particularly important when we think about things like utility bills. We all know that utility companies can certainly charge a deposit if late payments are continuing to be received, and we certainly want to avoid that. So making sure that you have streamlined your approval workflows, which again, you're still in control of. So whatever your approval workflows are today will remain the same, but just in an automated fashion. Also, time and labor. It's eliminating those manual paper-based tasks. And for AP, there's many of those, from opening the mail to having to scan it in, emailing invoices around to be coded or approved, or even walking invoices down the hall. You start to think about things that can happen. What if something doesn't get paid because someone never returns that invoice? And so there's many ways with AP that I think always that we can improve upon our processes, but something about, automating just takes the worry off your plate in a lot of different areas. And then finally, cost. You're even able to add new revenue from e-payment rebates if you automate your payment process. You're cutting hard and soft processing costs. What today is an extremely manual process of cutting paper checks, and I always find this stat to be quite interesting. I actually started working in accounting out of school in the late 80s. So yes, a long time ago, where everything was paid with a paper check and there was paper everywhere. And so I am surprised all these years later that so many paper checks are still being used to pay vendors. Actually, there's research out there that says small to mid-sized companies are still paying their vendors with checks 80% of the time, 80%. And I think we all know that checks are the most fraud prone. Checks can get stolen, lost in the mail. So again, just thinking about the big picture and thinking about change, change management. Technology is here, and so we need to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. So AP automation with AvidXchange. So AvidXchange actually last year processed 12 million payments, and we're on track to do many more than that in 2020, even with the COVID-19 situation. At AvidXchange, we have over 1,400 employees, and 400 of those are actually dedicated to payment onboarding and processing. So they're making sure that vendors are enrolled successfully, that payments are being facilitated timely, that payments are clearing. We're adding over 1,000 suppliers to the AvidPay network every week. We currently have over 680,000 active suppliers, which is the largest in the space. We integrate with over 150 accounting systems, and we have lots of customers. And our customer retention rate is extremely high, and it's because we have what we call sticky products, the products that really become an important part of our customers' daily operations. And so, you know, it's a good product, it works for them, it gives them everything they need, and again, makes their lives much easier. So there are two types of automation solutions. The first one being the invoice process, and the second one being the payment process. So we're going to talk first about AvidInvoice. So again, many benefits here. I won't go over each one, but as you can see here, when you automate, it's highly scalable. If your company is growing, with automation, you don't necessarily need to add new heads in AP to maintain that growth. You don't need to add any more data entry people, because with automation, that part goes away. Again, you can always connect anywhere at any time as long as you have an internet connection. There's no expensive hardware to buy. We operate in the cloud. And you can approve your invoices and payments mobily. So many, many benefits of AvidInvoice. And I think this slide in particular really resonates. And it's one that I have seen hundreds of times, but it still talks to me because, you know, I remember being that, AP team way back in the day that was having to do all of these manual tasks. So before automation, excuse me, the AP process looks very similar to what you see on the screen. Someone is opening the mail, they're routing those invoices around, coding, making sure they're approved. A lot of times, again, that's through email, and they're having to manually enter in all of that invoice information. And then on the payment side, they're, of course, selecting which invoices they want to pay, cutting checks, going through the traditional bank rec process, following up with vendors, and then filing invoices. I know back in the 90s, I worked for a company, and this was before AP automation. We had walls, row after row of filing cabinets. It was a rather large organization, and we even had to have offsite storage to keep all of our records because we need to keep them for 7 years. So with filing paper invoices, you're also running the risk of things getting lost. So that's never a good thing, particularly if it's a sample, if it's something that an auditor has requested. So invoices, filing them, the paper, all can be a thing of the past. Because now, after automation, you're taking all of these steps on the left and you're combining them into 3 here on the right. And these are the 3 steps that you would definitely continue to keep, because these are things that your business makes decisions on as to how to code invoices, who needs to approve them, and then, of course, selecting invoices for payment. And we see, look at that straight through processing improvement, 2.4 times with automation. It's just incredible. And with AvidInvoice, we actually will handle the invoice collection piece, meaning that we can open up a PO box in your company's name, and our team will actually manage that. So those paper invoices that are still being mailed in, we'll actually handle getting those open, getting them scanned into your automated workflow. We'll also create an email address in your name so that those vendors that are emailing invoices today can continue to email, just to a different email address. And then always, if you still receive any invoices in-house, maybe someone comes by and drops one on a desk, you'll always have the ability to upload that yourself and get that into your automated workflow. So we're actually going to capture your invoices, your invoice images, and we're going to capture that header detail. So no more manual entry of, the vendor information, the invoice number, date, amount, etc. That's all being done for you through our technology and our service teams. And as I mentioned, you will continue to create your own workflows. Our team will certainly work with you when you're going through onboarding. We're going to do things like uploading your chart of accounts so that all of your accounts are there for you to choose from when coding. We're going to upload your master vendor file so that, again, you're in complete control of adding vendors to your system. Your ERP will remain your system of record, but AvidXchange and your ERP can talk to each other through a syncing mechanism. So we're getting those invoices collected. We're capturing that header information so that all you have to do is just review, add the coding, that we do have tools that can help you with that, and approve. So what we're looking at now is actually an approver's queue. So what happens when an approver has invoices to approve, they'll receive an automated email letting them know that they need to log in and approve. So once they do so, they can see at a quick glance how many invoices they have for approval. And if it's a high-level approver that doesn't necessarily want to go into each individual invoice, they can actually just review, the things like the supplier information, total dollar amount, et cetera, and then just approve in bulk. But most people will actually want to go in and check out each one and review and make sure that the coding is correct. And that's what we're looking at right now, is the actual workflow itself. So this is, of course, your invoice image. So it doesn't matter if it's 1 page or 100 pages. We're going to capture all of that for you. Over here is that header detail that I was talking about. So we're extracting all of this information. And again, your suppliers are being chosen from your master vendor file. So if an invoice comes in for a supplier that's not already set up in your system, it will move to an exception queue. And then your team will actually monitor that exception queue because we certainly wouldn't want to assume that a new vendor is correct. So then down here where it says distributions, this is where you would apply coding. And again, that's from your chart of accounts. But as you'll see here, there's already coding applied. And that's because we have tools that can help you with those recurring invoices that are coded the same way month over month. You can actually just turn that smart coding feature on. It will remember that vendor, that account number for that particular vendor, and code it the same way that you coded it last month. But that being said, you always have the ability to come down and make changes if you need to. You can also add multiple lines of distribution. You can split out coding based on percentages. And these columns will actually reflect your existing GL string. So all of this is configurable to meet your needs. Once those invoices are fully coded and fully approved on your end, then they will be batched and then sent back over to your accounting system. And they'll go back into your AP subledger. So it would look just like you entered those invoices yourself. And of course, the next step in the AP process is payment. So when those invoices become due, that's where AvidPay can come in. So if we talk a little bit about the AvidPay network, again, 680,000 plus suppliers, and this grows, over 1,000 every day. We have multiple methods available, payment methods available for your suppliers to choose from. That includes where it says MasterCard. We use virtual cards, so they're not a tangible card. It's a card that is created for a specific vendor and a specific dollar amount. So once the vendor processes that card through their merchant account, then that card number expires. So extremely, fraud preventative tool there, if you will, so they can't use that same number over and over again. Also, we have an enhanced ACH process, and we have the paper check. But instead of you having to print the checks and stuff the envelopes and mail them out, we'll do that for you. And what we typically see is that on day one, as soon as you go live on AvidPay, about 28% of your vendors you will find are already in the AvidPay network, and they're already receiving payments on behalf of other clients. So if that's the case, that's great. But if not, that's fine. We actually have that dedicated team that will reach out to your vendors. They'll educate them on the AvidPay network, the different payment methods, and then ultimately, collect their information, and then, the payment will go out. A lot of times people think, well, I'm sure utility suppliers, they would just want to check. And actually, a good portion of utility suppliers actually accept a virtual card payment. It's much easier for them on the AR side. We also have over 30,000 APD suppliers, and AvidPay Direct, again, is our enhanced ACH offering. We have 200,000 plus e-payment suppliers enrolled, and again, it's all about getting rid of the paper, converting those check vendors over to e-payment forms. And then we have the highest e-payment adoption in the space at 40% on average. So that means we're able to convert check vendors over to an e-payment at that rate. So pretty impressive. And we'll talk really quick about the AvidPay network and how it works. And as I mentioned, you're still going to generate your payments. You are going to create your check run just like you do today. It will assign your check numbers, but instead of pushing those checks to the printer, you'll actually, through our integration, have an option available to you to send those payments over to the AvidPay network. So once we receive that payment file, you again will have the ability to do an additional approval on those payments. So it kind of mirrors the traditional check signing. So you can approve those payments online, so you're not dependent on someone being in the office to approve something before you can actually get going with your check run. Once those are approved, we're going to initiate individual ACH debits to your bank account. So if you've got 10 payments in a payment batch, you'll see 10 separate ACH debits on your bank statement. But also on your bank statement, you will see your check number referenced as well as the vendor's name. So super easy to tie that back to your check run. And then here, of course, once the debit happens, we are creating the different payment methods based on what the supplier has told us. So one of these three methods is being created, and then the payments are facilitated out to your vendors. So as far as a traditional bank reconciliation process goes, that becomes much easier for you. So today, where you're ticking and tying, did this check clear, did this check clear, that will go away and become more of just a review process for you, because all of your payments are going out of the settlement account. So once we debit your account, those funds are going into a settlement account, a clearing account, and then payment is made that way. So for your purposes, all of your payments will show as cleared, and I'm using air quotes here, from your ERP standpoint. So that traditional bank rec that takes so long is gone. So now we're going to take another poll question, and then we're going to move to Q&A. So what are your next steps? If you take just a few seconds to answer that for us, if you'd like to see a personalized demo of AvidXchange's solutions, or you would like more information on AP automation, or if you're just here to learn, if you could take a few seconds just to answer that. right, if you can get those in there, we'll look at the results here in a second.
And I'll leave it open for just another second more because we almost have 100% completion.
Oh, wonderful. That's great.
All right, I'm going to end it because it looks like everybody is done. All right, so while we're getting the results for you, I do have a couple of questions that came in. So first, can I send all of my vendor payments through AvidXchange?
So that's a great question. And the answer is yes and no. There are going to be rush payments. We all know that sometimes a vendor may just drop by your office and need a check right then. The beauty here with the AvidPay network is that you never lose the ability to cut checks in-house if you need to send a check right then. So you can definitely send the majority of your payments over to AvidPay, but you'll always maintain that control of being able to process one here or there yourself.
Great, thank you. Will my invoice approval process need to change?
No, and that's the great thing is that whatever controls you have in place around your workflow and your approvals can stay in place. It's just that they're going to be automated. So those invoices are going to be coded and approved a lot faster than what they are today in a manual process. But again, you're still in control over those approvals.
Wonderful. Next question that came in, is there a limit to the number of users that can use the solution?
You know, I have never heard of the limit. And I know we have some very large companies that have, you know, in excess of 100+ users. So to my knowledge, there is no limit.
Wonderful. All right, so I don't have any other questions just yet, so we can leave it open. And I believe there is another slide with a fun incentive that Avid has going today. If you could switch to that for me, please.
Sure.
So for those of you that did request to see a demo, Avid is being wonderful and giving out $50 MasterCard gift cards for attending that demo. If you are interested as well in doing that, we can still get you set up on that. The JMT team will follow up with you. You can also respond to our follow-up email that we'll be sending this afternoon to you if you want to see more. And so with that, I don't see any other questions coming in. So Rhonda, I'm going to let you say any closing remarks and then I will wrap it up for us.
Sure. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. Hopefully you got some good information out of this. And again, if you're currently not using a year-end or month-end checklist, I encourage you to just go out and search for one. There's lots of great templates out there. So again, thank you.
All right, thank you. And for those of you that just submitted questions, we will follow up with you right after this webinar. I appreciate everyone joining us today, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.